I see dead people.
Hot shit.
Here's Johnny.
Stop.
We have such sights to show you.
Bring the motherfucking ruckus. Fuck you too.
We are drinking your child's namesake.
It's true. He was named after that. The Bakri when I was younger.
Yeah, that was something you lived through, and it stuck with you so much. You said, "All right, I'm gonna name my firstborn after this commitment."
And the second one. Yeah.
Dude, when I tell people that, they love it.
And the second
I'm
one.
like, "Oh yeah, and the second one."
And the second one.
Oh yeah. When I tell people that you named your kids after the lovely vices of your life, it's funny.
The Irish car bumps. How, yeah, I mean, that's generally how they were made in the first place, so that's how that worked out.
You know, some people name their kids after the place that they were conceived.
Yeah.
Some people name their kids after how they were conceived.
It's true. Very true.
Yeah. I'm going to name my kid Anal. That's how I wish it was an accident. First off. Oh, shit. Yeah, I don't know if that's in the cards for me. Not to make this super real, super quick, but, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about kids yet. Some of my friends have finally started having kids.
Yeah.
You know, I've entered my 30s, and, it's now finally happening. And I'm like, okay. It's like you were one of the only people I knew who had kids.
Yeah.
And then I have older friends that are both single and divorced and already popped out several kids.
Yeah.
By the time I was in high school.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So you were the first person I saw.
Yeah. I had kids
that I recorded
early.
with. Yeah, you had kids early.
I had kids pretty early. I had kids at 26 is when I had my first kid. And then, 27. And then I had another one at 31. So, yeah, I had 2 kids by the
That's
time.
not that bad, actually.
Yeah, it wasn't too...
No. People like my mom get stuck at 19, and it devours their lives, so you're fine. I don't want to talk about your kids, though.
Okay. Okay, that's fair.
No, I love your kids. It's just we're not doing a kids episode.
We are not doing it.
So I want to change tactics real fast. We could talk about your kids on the next episode when we're reading creepy kids stories.
Okay. I have lots of creepy kid stories.
Like how I always make you read creepy kids stories.
Yeah.
I just get a kick out of your reaction, cause one of the first things I said when I walked in here, I'm like, oh, your boy's getting so big. You know, he's what, 13?
Yeah.
And it's just first thing you said is oh, he's taller than me now.
Yeah.
And then you were like, he's gonna come into my room at night and just fucking snap my neck.
He is. He's just a monster. I still have to just casually pick him up and lift him up in the air occasionally just to show him.
Just to teach him.
Be like, hey,
if you're taking me, it's gonna be a fucking fight.
We're gonna battle, bud. I can throw some hands.
There can only be one.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we're at right now, so it's fun.
So fucking funny. Yeah, you also told me that you were dipping his toe into horror.
Yeah,
because I took a look at your lament configuration over here.
Yep.
That's wonderful. I mentioned that's the coolest thing about being a parent is you finally got to the age where you could show the things that that you think fondly of, that you genuinely enjoy.
Yep.
Without fear of immediate misunderstanding or disinterest, because it's very easy for a kid to do both of those.
I mean, I wouldn't force him to be interested in horror stuff.
No. But you took him in the pool the right way.
Yeah.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
One toe
and
at
only
a time.
When he interested, only when they're interested. If they're showing interest into it, then just kind of build their base slowly. But yeah, it's been fun. I'm not forcing him to do anything, but he's digging into it, and it's been fun. He's getting into comic books, horror movies, and all kinds of fun stuff. So.
Oh yeah, you're a big comic book nerd too.
I am a big comic book nerd too.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
He's read lots of fun stuff. He's getting into a lot of the modern Batman stuff, the Batman Who Laughs, which has some horror elements to
Fuck
it in
yeah.
its own ass and stuff like that. So
Fuck yeah.
he's getting into his own stuff, and it's been a fun ride.
He's his own person.
So at least I get to enjoy it for a little bit before he fucking kills me one night. So it's been fun.
No, it's not gonna be him who does it. It's gonna be the little one.
It always is the little one. It's always the little one.
It's always the one you don't expect.
Mm-hmm.
The one who pretends to like you the
Yeah,
most.
very true.
Oh shit, that's funny. No, before we get into the topic of today's episode, you know, we're drinking, we're having a good time. We just watched the movie Leviathan. It was good.
Yep.
I liked it. I'm actually surprised I missed it. It's the Abyss's fault. We came to terms. The Abyss came out the same year, 5 months after this came out.
Mm-hmm.
This probably didn't do well. But hey, the Stan Winston effects are still super cool.
Yep.
Great cast. I feel bad for Ernie Hudson.
Yep.
Peter Wells is a grumpy cock.
Yep.
But we're here for it. We're going to watch... so that came out in 89, Leviathan. Mm-hmm. It's on HBO Max, by the way. Highly recommend.
Yep.
And after we're done recording the Alien episode, we're going to watch an Alien movie, or a sci-fi horror movie called Screamers, that my tattoo artist told me to watch, so I'm looking forward to it. It's a 95,
Yep.
So that tells me that we might get some janky CGI, which I'm always here for.
Oh, yeah.
Always here for the jank.
Yep.
If you know me, you know I'm janked up. So I'm excited for that. What's your best thoughts of Leviathan?
It's a good, solid creature feature movie. I mean, that's really what it is. Like the 80s, I feel like that was the wheelhouse for good creature feature movies with practical effects. Yep. You haven't got many of those. What do you think was the last good creature feature with practical effects? Because it's been a while. Like you don't see stuff like that very often anymore.
At first, my mind went to The Ritual.
Okay.
That was Netflix. That was 2019? 18?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. But I don't think only parts of the monster were practical. It was mostly CGI.
Yeah.
It's tough because The Void, I think, is also 2019.
Yeah.
And those were the guys that did, like, fucking Manborg and Psycho Goreman. You know, like, Psycho Goreman, tons of practical effects, beautiful practical effects. So, you know, it's tough because every once in a while we do get something. And it always surprises me.
Yeah.
But at this exact moment, I'm blanking on anything over the last, like, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. Like, the 80s, the late 80s...
There's something in
early
there,
90s,
I promise.
There is. There is.
I've watched too many movies on this show, and I've talked about too many movies on this show to not like, give shout-outs where they're due.
Yeah.
Like, I talk about the Chucky show a lot. I fucking love it. It's great. Stranger Things has a lot of practical effects. But it also is not quite creature feature horror. I'm going to think of something after I'm recording, and I'm going to put it in the fucking, like, the description box for this movie. And be like, I couldn't think of this, and I was a fucking idiot. But you should absolutely watch that.
Yeah.
But no, we got spoiled as time went on.
Big time.
There's the fact that I had never seen Leviathan until this point just shows that dig deep, try to find something, be willing to go back and look for it. Like, I think my tattoo artist only mentioned this one because we were already talking about Screamers.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, well, if you like Screamers, you know, go back a couple more years. and watch Leviathan.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'll do a Peter Weller double feature.
Mm-hmm. And it had a wild
And-
cast. Like, it really
No,
had,
it really did.
it had a wild cast. It has Peter Weller. We had a little Ernie Hudson in there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Daniel Stern.
Dan Stern.
Young Daniel Stern. It was good.
There were others. Yeah, no, it's good. Whereas I'm looking at this one and all I see is Peter Weller and Andy Lauer. And I'm like, oh, this might be rough.
Yeah.
But you know, we're here for it. This is what we do. This is how we pay for our sins.
One bad, one good. One bad, one good.
And we do it by drinking JMO and watching shitty movies
Very
together. True. This is just what we do. Switching gears real quick, I brought you a present. You were the first person I thought of when I got this.
Okay.
And I recently bought like a better version to go in my studio.
Okay.
So I was left with this little guy, and I said, I'm gonna find him a good home, and I'm gonna give him to someone who I know will care about him.
Okay.
So I want you to take care of him. It's my gift to you. I'm bequeathing.
Get out of here.
I'm bequeathing the Night King to you.
Get out of here.
As someone who I know
my goodness.
will respect and take care of him.
We had such good Game of Thrones.
I know.
We had such good Game of Thrones.
Dude, I recently did a post on Reddit about how I would have ended the series without changing the budget.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear it real quick?
I do.
It's a quick read, I promise. Guys, you've already heard us spend an entire episode bitching about Game of Thrones before. It's going to come back.
Yeah.
All right. No, I'll first show you the picture I took of my studio recently, because I think the replacement is in the... No, this is an old photo. But this is in my studio. I have like 80 of them.
Get out of here. Oh, solid. There's some fun ones in there.
Oh, it's great. I have a solid collection, dude.
That's a solid collection.
My Stephen King section.
There's some fun ones in there. I like the Peacemaker one in his underwear.
Yeah.
It's fun. There's definitely some good ones in there. Oh, the Pinhead one on the...
Yeah,
that's fun too.
I told you I
had
had one. But yeah, there he is. I had him in my Hall of Honor.
Yeah.
Which is two guys from Lord of the Rings, Darth Vader, Voldemort, the Mummy, Alien Queen.
Yep.
I said, okay, you get to go down there as one of the greatest villains that got shat on. No, so the version I bought recently, which I didn't know was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I bought another one. I was like, what? This is a thing. It's a dead Viserion.
Get out of here.
And he's riding on the back of it.
Oh, that's pretty sick.
And I said, this dude has... I was like, this dude has this? Like, I bought it secondhand. I was like, you got a mint fucking version of this?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. I was like, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
So I fucking bought it right then and there. I was like, I want this. And then I put them next to each other. He took the spot of the Alien Queen, and I moved the Alien Queen to the other side. And I was like, all right, Dead Viserion and Night King standing right next to Night King. And I was like... Pennywise, I could have like 3 or 4 of, because they all look different and they're fun.
Yeah.
But just having a Night King standing there next to a Night King who's riding a dragon, one of these is inferior to the other.
100%.
I actually think I have a picture of it. I'll just show you real quick, and I'll cut the silence. But I have like 84 of them. I have like I have 3 pending for pre-order. I got Nosferatu, The Crow, and Tiffany from Chucky.
Nice.
That are all pending.
No, that's sick.
So I got that.
Yeah.
And he's sitting down there in the bottom corner now, and I'm like, you're good where you're at. Yeah. But I was like, I can't have 2 Night Kings, dude. So hopefully you have somewhere fun that you could put him. Do you have a desk at work or up in your room or something? Oh. Maybe even right there.
I think he's gonna go right next to Elvis Duck.
Right next to Elvis Duck.
Yeah.
That's welcomed place next to a lament configuration.
I think so. Yeah.
Elvis Duck and lament configuration. It's a good place.
It is a good spot.
But let me read to you my Game of Thrones thing.
Okay.
Because what someone challenged the subreddit of Game of Thrones.
Okay.
They said, essentially, try to rewrite as little of you as you can of the last season.
Okay.
Without changing as much as you fucking can. Just make it better.
Okay.
And here's what I wrote. I have a lengthy write-up for how I would change the entire last season. I believe a lot of the characters didn't end up with the arcs they were promised earlier on, with entire plot points missing as well. I'd personally like to see Lady Stoneheart and the Dead Stark family come back to fight the Night King, whether literally or metaphorically, during the Long Night, as well as see an ending to the Azor Ahai prophecy. I would have the season begin with the promise of the Long Night being a cop-out, as the Night King would fly to King's Landing and take that city instead, bringing together the realm with a very serious threat of the Dead Army coming down from the north and a city of the dead holding the capital. A real shit sandwich resulting in the final fight for humanity taking place in the Vale, while a Suicide Squad takes on the Night King in the Red Keep. Lots of major players die. Arya does a fake out with the changing faces to save Sansa at one point. Jaime becomes Azor Ahai after he sees Brienne die. Jon and Dany both die trying to take on the Night King and Queen, in parentheses, Cersei. But Jon is able to come back from the dead at the end because of Stoneheart's sacrifice, and chooses to take the throne as a promise to Dany and his family, Song of Ice and Fire fulfilled. As you can see, I personally believe it would take more than changing the last episode to fix a lot of the problems that the season has. However, if it was just down to the last episode, and I had room to change, keeping the budget. I've recently rewatched the last episode and looked into a lot of the criticism for the finale, and I think a small but meaningful twist could have came from changed trajectory of perception for a lot of characters and still would have allowed the show to end a lot of the same ways without it being too different. I'm talking about keeping most pieces where they start at the beginning of the episode and where they end. With the episode with those pieces where the episode ended, still have the same budget, course of action, and character plot progression.
Yep.
The twist, of course, is Cersei.
Yep.
Who, in the original cut, did nothing but stand there and die. The least Cersei thing to do, in my opinion. This is the woman who blew up the Sept. She wouldn't let Dany take King's Landing from her, not over her dead body. Duh. She lost everything for the throne. What does she care about the fucking city if it means losing the seat? So she pulls a Mad Queen. She stalks wildfire around the Red Keep and branches it down the tunnels, lining the sewers, running it through the garbage all over the city. She tells no one and simply has her soldiers prepare that this is happening the night before Dany is intended to siege the capital. She effectively straps the Red Keep with a suicide vest and lines the streets with hostages. The kicker is that no one knows but her. She invites more people in from outside to add kindling to the fire. But she sits back with a smirk on her face, muttering on, burn them all, burn them all, burn it all down. Meanwhile, Jaime, Arya, Hound are still headed into the city to get her without knowing what's going on. Jon, Tyrion, Dany are all still ready to take the city. They come marching up, flying up, whatever. All the pieces are still where the episode starts then.
Yep.
Nothing huge has changed. Dany takes down the Greyjoy fleet. First canonical thing. Meanwhile, Arya and the Hound make their way through the city as it's dealing with evacuation from proposed war. Jaime fights Euron on the beach in the back entrance of the keep. Dany blasts the Gold Army out the front gate while knocking on the door to King's Landing, and Jon and the army into the wall, into the city. A lot of the same beats, right? Dany continues to fly around. She takes out the perimeter Scorpion turrets. That could take her a lot of time if she's trying to dip, dive, and dodge all over that shit. The primary focus is to protect herself and allow her to take the city in a safer way while her men literally lay siege in the streets. No assassination of character. Back at the Red Keep, Jaime makes it all the way up to Cersei, who is surprised to find him there. He tells her that there's still time to leave, that they can escape together, and she monologues about how it's too late for her, but he doesn't understand why, until she tells him what she's done. Knowing full well this is what branded Jaime the Kingslayer, he's heartbroken to be back in the same situation with his sister. To mirror how Jon takes down Dany in the original episode, Jaime embraces Cersei and kills her. He embraces her body, accepts his fate to end there, much like how he does in the original episode, but now he's doing it to see his duty fulfilled. Mm-hmm. Because he's sick of living like this. He never wanted to do this again, and now he's worse off.
Yep.
Some semblance of an arc without destroying his character. Arya and the Hound make it all the way to the top, and the Hound leaves Arya to fight brother. We're keeping Clegane Bull. Only Arya gets to the room in question, and she sees Jaime already killed Cersei. He tells her to leave and explains that they should signal a ceasefire by ringing the bells to get to Jon, that they might still be able to save everyone. He's the one who tells Arya this. Cersei's dead. She's pissed. There's a harmony here because Ned found Jaime when he did the king slaying, and Ned didn't give him a chance to explain. But now Arya is here and softly redeems him. Jaime can finish her list, allowing both of them to kind of let go of what's been weighing on them since the first season. Jaime stays, Arya leaves, Clegane Bull happens, they both die, maybe even falling off into fire as well. It just seems poetic, whatever. King's Landing is almost taken, all the way up to the Red Keep. But it's solidified at that point and untouched with no sight of opening up anytime soon. Jon's army is sitting there pounding on the walls, and with Euron dead and Cersei refusing to come out, they're ready to take it. They're ready to just blow it the fuck up. But Arya gets to Jon in time and tells him about everything. He signals the bells and brings Dany down from Drogon. She's taken all the defenses of the city. She's no longer scared. She can land. Tyrion gets caught up on everything Arya is talking about, and they know the three of them are going to have to convince Dany about what's going on and what will happen if she chooses to light the keep on fire. But she's pissed, both about Missandei and Rhaegal and Varys and the betrayals and the threats and how no one has been there for her, and how she knows Tyrion betrayed her again when he let Jaime go from the camp when he was caught. She knows Jaime is in there, presumably with Cersei. She thinks Tyrion is trying to save his family again. And she thinks Jon is too soft to his family. He bends too much to them. She would have never bent to her brother. It all starts to come back to her. She's getting pissed off about everyone around her, just saying a ton of shit. And she doesn't believe them. She thinks Sansa is pulling the strings with Arya. She's trying to play some type of game. Everyone tells her to stand down, and she basically says, no, I have no reason to. No assassination of character. Yep. Just says, I don't believe you guys, and I'm going to see this through, even if that means lighting that shit on fire. Because now it's not about the city. It's about this moment. And she's done this shit all the way up to season 8, where people are like, hey, you shouldn't light that one dude on fire. And she's like, I think I'm going to light that dude on fire. You know, like, time. Happens all the time. Yeah. Honest mistake, right? Everyone who knows what's going on scatters as she flies off, which gives her some hesitancy, but whatever. Jaime sees the dragon coming, holds Cersei's body closer to him, and closes his eyes. Dany lights the tower like a candle to a dynamite stick, and it blows the fuck up. And when it blows up, to Dany's amazement, the entire fucking keep blows up, and it strings down, much like the Sept, into the arcing down the street, now blowing up innocent people. The problem is, from the perspective of the seat of the people in the streets, it looks like Dragonfire. So now there's a perspective in the people and everyone around that she blew everyone up. More than 50% of King's Landing is lost. But Sir Davos is able to save most of our important characters by knowing the quick way out of King's Landing. Everyone's rocked and shooketh by what they come back to find, to see what Dany has done. She's delivered on the Mad King's promise, albeit unintentionally. She fell right into Cersei's plan of destruction. She now looks like she blew up half the city and killed thousands of innocent people. She can't forgive herself. She does the mental math. If she lands now, tries to take ownership of King's Landing, everyone's going to resent her. She'll never have the kingdom's love, which is the one thing she cares about the most. Worse, she does the math and thinks that they might try to kill her. Effectively, she feels like she has no one. Her dream of coming here and ruling is dashed in one shitty moment. And with a harrowing, broken look down at Jon and Tyrion, who told her not to fucking do that, she simply flies away on Drogon.
Yep.
The city is in ruins. Everyone is looking for someone to be king, and they all turn to Jon and Tyrion, who both decline for different reasons. If people still want it to be Bran, it could be Bran, but I personally always wanted it to be Jon for reasons, and Bran for worse reasons to not be. Whatever.
Yep.
Anyways, this solves the stupid last-minute Targaryen madness bullshit that they pulled on Dany, and gives a more contextually flavorful, fulfilling end to several characters and to the series, with only minor detail changes, and really as little changes to the plot as I can think. And then I did a TLDR. Cersei lines the Red Keep with wildfire and holds King Landing hostage. Jaime comes and takes her out because she's pulling a Mad Queen. Everyone tries to tell Dany that if she blows up the keep, she'll blow up the city. She doesn't believe anyone, lights it up, blows up everything. Everyone hates her for it. She bails, and the same players are still left standing to do whatever. Minor changes to the plot and execution, while big changes in public perception of the finale.
I like it.
Do you think there's anything missing?
No, I like Jaime had to kill Cersei. Like that was set up the entire way. And it never happened.
It was her prophecy, too.
Yeah, Jaime had to be the one to kill Cersei, and
she always thought it was going to be Tyrion.
And they took the easy way out on that.
Oh my god, that's like the fucking title of the book about how that entire season went.
Yeah. It
could be titled "They Took the Easy Way Out."
Yeah. Yeah.
For real.
Yeah. We've talked about the last season a bunch. And how bad it gets.
We literally did a breakdown of where we thought every character should go at one point.
We did. Yeah, and it was rough. I always had the same kind of thing. I always went with the best ending would have been not an ending at all. Just a continuity of almost like nothing happening in the same way that he writes. But by the time that the showrunners got control of the show, when they actually started doing the future writing,
filling in spots.
Yeah, it had gone so far away from his style of writing that it got out of hand. And it just became it turned into basically almost any kind of basic TV show. It had to have some kind of wrapped up ending to it. It transformed its way out of something that was a novel into something that was really well adapted into basically just a, Grey's Anatomy of TV shows.
Jesus Christ. You're right, though.
But that's
You're right,
what
though.
happened.
They
mailed it in.
They did a Sopranos. They literally did a Sopranos.
Yeah. So it just got mailed in, and that's what happened to it. So, not to knock on anybody who likes Grey's Anatomy, but...
No.
Yeah, but...
No, we're allowed to knock on them.
But that's what
you like shitty TV shows.
So, yeah, it just got mailed in, and it could, so much more. You had all these characters that you kind of build up, and...
Such beautiful pieces, and to such lengths we went, just the roller coaster that is Jon Snow's fucking life, and
there aren't,
and to what end? You just fucking push him outside and close the door behind him in the ending of the show.
There's a handful of shows in history that developed characters better than Game of Thrones did throughout its time, where you learned complete stories where it would keep bouncing around and you would get more and more and more of each character.
I really liked Lost when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because it didn't feel like something that should be on regular cable.
Yeah.
At least not at the start. Because I was like, this is good.
Yeah.
Like, these people aren't talking the way people usually talk in TV shows.
Yeah.
The action is surreal and interesting, and there's mysteries everywhere. Yeah. And much like that.
Yeah.
No one... They caught up to the idea they had before they had time to finish the fucking idea.
Yeah.
And they just put pen to paper and filmed the easiest thing they could and just fucking phoned in the ending. Because they felt like that was the only choice they had left at the time. And I think what's especially shitty, because a lot of things are shitty about this situation. What's especially shitty is that D&D, like, every project they had after that, like, immediately got canceled.
Yeah.
Because the public perception was just like, you single-handedly ruined a franchise that at one point could have rivaled, like, fucking Walking Dead, which has, like, millions of fucking fans.
Yeah.
Like, tons of people. Like, this was at the height when we were like, I think the only thing to rival how many people liked these two fucking shows is like sports.
Yeah.
People felt as strongly about The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones as they did about the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's true. Like, so...
You know,
while
belief, hopes, dreams.
Game of Thrones was.
Passion, admiration.
I've never seen, and I'll still say this to the day, I've never seen a show that disappeared out of mainstream media as fast as Game of Thrones did.
Well, I love House of Dragon.
Yeah.
House of Dragon is genuinely very good.
It is very good, and what I'm afraid about House of Dragons is just trying to tell too much of a story.
Well, isn't it also based off of books?
Yeah, it is.
See, I never read those.
Yeah. So House of Dragons based off it's the prequel. Mm-hmm. It is, but House of Dragons covers hundreds of years, while Game of Thrones takes place in
one select time period.
So
15 to 20 years.
In House of Dragons you're gonna get generations of
they've already time skipped.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
It just keeps going. It just keeps going. So
I'm
you're
okay
gonna
with
get generations of characters with
I'm okay with that.
But
you think they're biting off more than they can chew?
I'm afraid they're gonna go too fast, too far. You know what I mean? Like too quick.
Basically the same thing that happened before.
Yeah, just too quick. Without
too fast,
developing
too quick.
Characters.
That's fair.
But Game of Thrones, I mean, at one point Game of Thrones was probably the most must-watch TV on anything. Just basically on TV, period. Not just on cable, but period. I mean, people would sit around and have
the only problem was people had to pay extra for it.
Yeah. But people would have Game of Thrones parties. People would have watch parties.
The only reason I say Walking Dead rivals that is because Walking Dead was on basic cable.
Yeah.
No one had to pay extra for Walking Dead. It was accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
People had Walking Dead watch parties. People had series celebrations. It had its own fucking post show on the network. Funded on the network.
Mm-hmm.
Game of Thrones only had like little inside documentary bits that followed up maybe 5 minutes after the episode. It did not have an entire fucking program. It had a podcast. It didn't have an entire
I kind of like that though. The reason why I kind of like that is because anything that happened in Game of Thrones and some of the way that the episodes ended is that Game of Thrones was better at making things linger for longer.
This isn't a question about what's better.
Yeah.
Game
I
of
know.
Thrones is clearly
Oh, yeah.
better than Walking
Yeah,
Dead.
I just think that
saying.
the way that the episodes would end, the way, I mean,
Up until season, I would say 6, the show was one of the best shows ever made.
yeah,
Genuinely.
yeah,
Hard Home, I will never be able to experience Hard Home for the first time again.
yep,
And if I could convince my fucking girlfriend
yep.
to just watch the show with me,
Yep.
I might be able to feel that again.
Even
through her.
There was so many things. Even from the very first episode, of Bran getting pushed out the window, stuff like that lingered on you.
Yeah.
You'd watch it and you'd think about it. You'd think about it for days after the fact.
Yeah.
The Red Wedding.
Yeah.
Oberyn getting killed by the Mountain. Like, there was so many things that literally just happened, and they were just Joffrey's death. Like, there were so many little moments at the end of
But
shows.
I also, just to foil, one of the greatest and most awful things ever put to TV fucking audiences was Negan offing Abraham
Sure.
and then immediately turning on Glenn.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, like, Abraham we could have lived with. It was sad.
Yep.
But we saw it coming.
Yep.
Glenn was in the books and everyone was wishing that they wouldn't do what the books did.
Yep.
And you think while you're watching Abraham, okay, at least everyone else is safe. And fucking Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I fucking love that guy. He turns on Glenn.
Yep.
And frankly ruins the entire fucking show right then
Yeah.
and there. Glenn was the heart of The Walking Dead, and without him in the show, Rick became the worst person ever, and I stopped wanting to watch it, and to this day I still haven't finished it. Because I just don't care anymore. The new movie that's coming out is coming out 10 years too late. All the spin-off shows never should have happened. But I'm going to say that the problem started right then and there, and it's because that was too much.
Yeah.
That was our boy. Everyone loved him. He needed at least another season before going out heroically because of something.
Yeah.
He didn't need to go from Negan's baseball bat. That was seeing his half of his head popped out and the other half just fucking broken
Especially
in.
after
And him just like looking at his wife like with his eye bulging out of his skull.
You're just starting to cheer for him. He has his love interest now.
Right.
He's all the
Well,
positive
she's
things.
pregnant.
Yep. She's all the
She was
positive
pregnant.
things going for him in his life, and then you just take him out.
Mm-hmm.
And
He was a
probably
season 1 character.
Yep.
End of episode 1.
He's probably one of the most brutal deaths.
End of episode 1, technically. And he lasted 8 seasons.
Of a beloved character. It probably is one of the worst deaths of a beloved character in a series.
So that's my only foil. That's my only foil is that as many people talked about that than they talked about the Red Wedding. The same were talked to, the same amount.
But the thing is, so I'll say that for Game of Thrones is that there's probably 3 other things in that entire season that you could point to that are almost just as big as Grey.by.
Yeah.
And that was every season.
Oh
every
yeah.
season up until like
Oh yeah.
season.
But
7.
I'll be honest. I didn't watch the first season live
Of Game of Thrones?
of Game of Thrones.
You
My
picked it up?
uncle told me about it halfway
Yeah.
through season 2.
Okay.
And I will admit, having not watched it at that time,
Yep.
I felt like it was a club I wasn't invited to.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have HBO growing up.
Yep.
And that's where the watch parties came in. I started to hang out with a buddy who had it.
Okay.
And we just started to watch it.
Yep.
And it became a weekly thing.
Yep.
And then I started pirating it, and I solved my own problem. And then, 10 years later, we fucking finish it, and we all just fucking stand there staring at the TV at the same time.
There's nothing like it. I mean, there really was nothing like it. The first...
No.
Even like the first 4 notes of the theme song. I mean, there was nothing like... You got sucked in right into it. It was
complete
such a
cultural
weird,
phenomenon.
Yeah, it really was.
It really was.
That disappeared. Like I said, there is nothing that's ever disappeared like that show. Like that did. Like it's just gone.
Oh.
That's how bad the last season. Now there has been other ways that show ended.
I mean,
but
it's still proudly presented on the home screen of of HBO Max, or
Yeah.
just Max now. You know, it's still proudly put there. I think the only thing that died faster was the Cowboy Bebop reboot.
Oh my goodness.
That went from
about that.
homepage on Netflix to the back fucking dusty corner that
Yeah.
no one looks at or goes toward anymore. You'd be hard to even find it on that app naturally without the search bar.
Yep.
Like, you won't.
Yeah. Which is good reason.
Yeah. I mean,
there's good reason for that.
It's
awful,
pretty bad.
but
It's pretty bad.
It's pretty awful.
It's pretty bad. I still liked parts of it, but it was pretty bad.
It was pretty gnarly. It was pretty gnarly.
I liked parts of it.
Yeah.
And I would say most of it came down to set design, music, and some cinematography.
Yeah.
I thought Cho was just not the right person for Spike, but
Nope.
I respected it. I thought Jet was fantastic.
Yep.
But I thought what's her face fucking sucked.
It's Faye.
That's not Faye. Faye is meant to be Angelina Jolie. Like, Faye is meant to be someone who's as charismatic as they are sexy, and they fucking toy with you.
Yeah.
This was just some bitch. She's attractive, yes, but she never used it.
No.
She didn't weaponize it. She wasn't Jessica Rabbit.
Yeah.
You know, like, there needs to be an awareness to... Angelina Jolie is just the best example I could think of as, like, a femme fatale. Like, I don't think, like, Scarlett Johansson's portrayal of Black Widow is as quite effective. Maybe the first movie she's in, Iron Man 2, that's the closest she gets to, like, literally manipulating someone with her looks.
Yeah.
But, like, nah, like, Faye just didn't have it. And the tease about Ed at the end was just the fucking worst.
Yep.
So yeah, the costumes, the cinematography, the special effects were all aces. And I respect what they tried to do, but it simply didn't work.
Yeah.
I kind of had the same opinion about the One Piece live adaptation. Not to, like, completely get into it. But, like, the actors are fine in the One Piece adaptation. It's the source material that's just kind of like...
Yeah.
Like, One Piece just isn't, like... It isn't art the way Cowboy Bebop is.
Yeah.
Which is why, you know, the episode about the drug smuggling couple with the red vials...
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly adapted. They genuinely did a very good job. That was a good episode of that live action show. But admittedly, Spike is not in a ton of that episode. It is 50% about this couple on the run.
Yep.
It's more of a mystery than the other episodes were. Oh, they also fucking ruined what's-his-face, the main bad guy.
Oh, not Spike, Vicious.
Vicious. I almost called him Spike, too. I don't know.
Vicious,
Buffy
I
the
know.
Vampire Slayer?
Yeah.
But they ruined Vicious in the TV show.
Yeah.
They just turned him into a fucking pussy.
Yeah.
It was the worst. And the twist about the girl fucking sucked.
Oh, Julia, yeah.
Just fucking adapt it. Like, I'm sorry. Like, the show was good. The episodes that they directly adapted, heaps and loads better than the ones where they just kind of made shit up.
Yep.
Because, like, the one about the fucking mad assassin floating dude with the top hat.
Yeah, Labro.
And Labro. That episode rocked, too.
Yeah.
And I was like, how can this show be so fucking hit and miss?
Yeah.
It's because it was bad.
I mean, honestly, see, they had two real choices that they could have went with the show. You could have did something like there was two real stories to Cowboy Bebop. There was the main story, which was Spike's redemption, Julia, and then they had all the side episodes, and it was kind of like. It reminded me a lot of, like, the X-Files, right? So, like, the X-Files has its main story that it goes through. Like, it has a whole alien sister gets abducted. Let's find my sister. Right. And that makes up a good, like, 50% of the show.
It does.
And then the other 50% of the show is literally just these one-off episodes of this.
Sure.
And they would have been better off doing one or the other. They would have been better off just banking it about the bounty
picking your
hunters
side and staying
and literally
there.
just doing one-offs, doing a whole entire season of just one-offs without really any kind of.
But they thought they needed to be high art. They thought they
Yeah.
needed. They thought like they couldn't just do a show about space bounty hunters because who wants another Firefly? Literally everyone. Literally everyone wants another Firefly.
So you could have did that.
So you could have done that.
You could have did the one-offs. Or you could have made it just
The drama about
the drama arc. You could have made that drama arc.
Vicious and
Yep, and you could have thrown in the other dramatic things to it. You could have thrown in Jet's story. You could have thrown in Jet's story when he...
daughter.
Yep, daughter. You could have done... There was a ton of different stuff you could do with it, so...
They just didn't do it.
They just didn't do it. You could have picked one or the other.
Didn't quite commit, didn't quite cast it very well. Just, you know.
It happens.
From the top.
What are you going to do?
That's an example where shit trickles from the top. Game of Thrones is shit trickles at the bottom.
Yep.
Because they had it.
Yep.
They had it and they wasted it.
So what happened with Cowboy Bebop is the source material. The source material was there for the entire show.
Yeah.
You could have wrote the entire show. You could have did a couple seasons and had the entire show written out. But the writers could not match the show. And the same kind of thing happened with Game of Thrones. The source material was there until it wasn't. And the writers could not match Martin. They couldn't match Martin.
It's a good problem for adaptations to have.
Yeah.
Because you either overcome it in the sense of like Matthew Vaughn's Kick-Ass or like the adaptation of Wanted.
Yeah.
Like neither of those are close to the comic books that Mark Miller wrote.
Wanted, I don't know if people have actually know what Wanted is, but Wanted is
fucking awesome.
The Wanted comic book series is completely different than the movie.
It's wild.
It is.
No, it's about supervillains existing in their own universe where supervillains have always won.
Yep.
And they just go around fucking doing domestic terrorism and people just have to live with it.
Yep.
And so this dude who just lives like a loser gets recruited by one of them one day and he joins not a hierarchy of assassins.
Yeah.
That's what the movie does. He joins a hierarchy of comic book villains.
Yep.
Like a Mr. Freeze, a Clayface, a fucking like little evil goblin, penguin man.
Yep.
A fucking AI robot, an anthropomorphic chick, like an evil telekinetic dude, an even worse dude who looks like Skeletor.
Yeah.
Fucking the puppeteer, like the fucking ventriloquist from Batman. Like they just make this hierarchy of like comic book bad guys, and you slowly watch this like wet noodle of a person turn into a comic book level bad guy. Yeah. And the comic book literally ends with like him killing the viewer. You know, like he basically looks up at you like with a gun pointed to the reader and says like, "Go fuck yourself."
It was really well done. And then
but the movie's nothing like it, and I love the movie though.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to make, is that sometimes the movie is just excessively better.
Yeah.
I love the comic book, but the movie is excessively better. Them just being a bunch of asshole assassins just makes so much more fucking sense than a world of comic book bad guys. They're too different to really compare.
Yeah.
But I love Super Crooks. I've read like everything Miller's done. It's fantastic. I'm on the I'm working my way up to Big Game because I'm really excited for Big Game, which just finished. That's his crossover.
Yeah.
Where like Kick-Ass is fighting, Wesley is fighting, Hit Girl is fighting, just fucking other Mark Miller characters, Nemesis.
Yeah.
You know, they're all there. The Magic Order, they're all fucking there, and I want to get up to that, reading that. So I'm 5 or so years away from publication, but I've read the first 15 years of his work.
Yeah.
And I'm at like 2018 Kick-Ass reboot about the black chick who puts on Kick-Ass's costume.
Gotcha.
So I'm about halfway through that, and then I get to read I think Hit Girl versus Kick Ass, I think, is the next thing up.
Okay.
Because that was 2019. So I'll only be 4 years behind at that point. But yeah, no, we've been fucking talking. Because we always get talking.
We get lost.
I mean, I have an edible in me. And I've been drinking a lot. So, you know, I'm gonna get lost, is basically just what I'm saying. And I've been looking at Screamers for the last hour. And I've been telling myself, yeah, I want to watch that. So we're going to watch that. But we've kind of meandered to the point, and I'm sorry, it's going to be a long episode. It just is. Aliens, man. Aliens. Do you believe in aliens?
Of course. It'd be irresponsible not to. It would just be... it's highly illogical that...
It would be closed-minded.
Yeah. With how infinite and how little of the universe that we know, it seems almost impossible that the same thing, the same conditions could not, you know, magically happening on a different planet, creating...
Well, I'm even saying different conditions for completely different forms
even different
of life.
conditions,
Yeah. But the truth is...
I always thought that the biggest, wildest thing that people talk about is, when we talk about aliens, we always identify them as different creatures, different species altogether, different looks. But
yeah.
The always thing that always gets me is what if aliens are essentially just like us? What if they go through the same evolution as we do? Essentially, we run into aliens, but essentially they are humans in their own right.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they don't call themselves humans. But,
no.
You know, but I mean, that's the possibility of that is absolutely there. I mean,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, the base to that argument is even just like multi-dimensional beings. Sure. We have nothing to confirm that this is the only reality that exists. It's just the reality our eyes see. Yeah. Scientifically speaking, it is just the image we are processing at the time of our observance. Yeah. You know, I always loved that horror story that said the scope of the human mind is only to the ratio of how far we can see. Yeah. Literally. Yeah. Not like a metaphor. Yeah. And that behind our heads at all times is something like just watching us.
I believe that.
And that no matter which way you pivot, you'll never be able to see what's directly behind you. And mirrors are uncanny in nature already. Yeah. So who can believe them when they lie to us every day? And you know, like, it's crazy.
There's been so many things going on. Like,
it's just a fun fucking conversation.
So, like, I remember growing up as a kid where, like, people would talk about aliens, and aliens were not a taboo subject, but it's something that was so mysterious. And it kind of tells the difference of the generations that we have now, because this is before social media and stuff like that. So if you heard of something like with aliens, it was so mystical in its own way, right? But information nowadays is so plentiful that when they had that congressional hearing last year,
right?
And they literally said, like, hey, we have aliens.
We confirm existence
of aliens. And no one talked about it. And that is the most mind-blowing thing. If I would have told my 7-year-old self, and I'm 40 now, so you're talking about 33, 30, 34 years.
Going back into, like, the fucking 90s.
If someone would have told me
aliens are fucking real,
if someone said that, it would have been front page news every day for months. If people that story would have never disappeared.
So why wasn't it? Was it downplayed?
No, there's just so much stuff going on now. Like, that's the thing about now.
Or Scutch, follow me here. People just don't give a shit.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I mean, and that's literally what I mean. Like, there's so much stuff that happens on a daily basis now that we hear about, right? So it's a big difference when all our information used to come from newspapers and magazines and even like the beginning of the internet, like when something big happened and that was like the first thing that you'd see if you turned on a computer. That's how we got all our information. Everybody was seeing the exact same thing at the exact same time, right? So like every newspaper had the same cover story. So every single person.
Extra, read all about it.
That was the very first thing that anybody saw in the morning.
You got mail.
Nowadays, the very first thing that you're seeing, like everybody's seeing something different now, depending on what they look at. You have
100%.
Yeah, you have a person that goes on Facebook first thing in the morning.
We have people idolizing people who only exist in their phones.
Exactly. It's crazy. So you get people that pop on the Facebook. You get people that pop on the Instagram. You get people that pop on to the very first thing they do is they go on to like Fox News and see what the first thing on that
aliens exist because they like fucking watching us.
You have the very first thing that somebody does is goes on like MSNBC, and that's the first thing that they watch. And then you have all these people that are just looking at different information now. There's so much different information out there now.
Yep.
That it's so watered down now. So there's no...
With so much information, there's no information.
Exactly. So everything's so watered down now, so there's no big stories anymore.
No.
Like, that's just gone now.
I remember reading the actual article about it and then watching a little bit of the video. And I couldn't believe what these people were, like, hired to say.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it's almost like at one point the question is just, like, point blank answered. Like, some dude just looks down at this dude in a fucking coat and tie and just goes, "Are you confirming the existence of extraterrestrial beings?" And the dude goes like, "Yeah." Yeah. And I was just like, huh. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Is basically just where I started and ended that conversation.
Yeah.
'Cause it being confirmed doesn't change anything for me.
Yeah. And I think the way
because logically I look at it the same way you did, which is to say, by the sheer size of the cosmos, there has to be something somewhere out there.
Yeah.
Same type of scale as us.
Yeah.
But maybe one small alteration that completely changes.
And that's how they refer to
genetic
him.
makeup.
Like when they referred to him, they didn't refer to him as great creature or they said was a non-human.
Yeah.
Creature, like basically a non-human biological entity.
That could mean so much, though.
Exactly. So the basis is what makes us human. So like it literally could be someone who has all the characteristics of a human being.
Well, we're meat sacks.
Yeah.
Break us down biologically. We are meat sacks with bone and blood, and you poke us and we burst like a balloon.
Yeah.
It is not hard for me to think out there are water sacks or dirt sacks or what have you.
Yeah.
Banana bread sacks. It's just the fact that there is an other.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that being confirmed.
Yeah.
I just want to know how.
Yeah.
You don't have to show me. I don't have to see it get up on TV and talk to us about TikTok. I mean, I just want to know how.
Yep.
Like, how did they exist? How do they exist?
People have been saying that for years, though. That the reason why we advance so fast. This
question has been going on for 80 years.
Yeah. The reason that we advance so fast as a society is by using basics
technologies
of
that
alien
we've
technologies.
inherited.
Yeah, that we've inherited from other places.
Yeah.
So like, if you think of it that way, and if you think about how fast that we have jumped in technology,
Oh yeah,
you know,
we grew up at the perfect time. We saw the creation of the internet.
yeah,
Like, the 80s wasn't quite what it is now,
yeah.
by a vast understatement.
I
Like,
mean, buddy, the automobile is barely 100 years old.
right,
Flight is barely 115 years old.
right.
You know, it's the advancements of civilization
The 20th and the 21st century.
that's been going on for, you know,
So these
10,000,
these are
15,000
two centuries.
years.
These are 2 centuries
Yeah.
that have been more important than 20 other centuries.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. More than that. I mean, realistically, like, you're talking about, like, 10,000
Well, yeah,
years.
if we're going AD, yeah, millions of years. Millions of years.
Now, the big thing is, like, so we have, the big thing that we have now compared to, like, so why wasn't, did they have the intelligence to build flying machines 600-700 years ago? Absolutely. There were people intelligent enough to do that. What separates us nowadays is cumulative knowledge as a base, right? So now we all have access to cumulative knowledge, right? So there was people that had ideas, but now we have cumulative knowledge that's based as fact, right? So now we have, this guy can invent this person can invent this person can invent this, and they realize that if they put all three things together, they form something else. Like, we have knowledge that's based, that's easily accessible.
It's an interpersonal knowledge.
Exactly.
It's gone different places than the self.
And that in itself will create, you know, massive generational leaps.
I have friends that are, like, afraid of AI.
Yeah, of course.
I'm totally cool with it.
And it's fun.
I don't give a fuck.
It's fun.
I think it's interesting.
It is interesting.
I think it's interesting. I think you ask a lot of fun moral, you know,
Is it going to, like,
theistic questions. No, I don't believe any of that shit.
is it going to take over the world and
I
all
don't
that
believe.
stuff?
That's
You
where
don't
I
believe
roll
any of
my
that fun
eyes.
stuff?
That's where I roll my eyes. There's
Yeah.
no way that the AI that they've created, that they haven't been told to get up on stage and say shit like that. There's no way.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
Because it exists all over media.
don't
There's too many examples of, like, robots getting up on stage and talking about, like, fucking missiles.
I can't imagine, especially after all this time, especially movies like, because we all grew up watching Terminator and stuff like that. I can't imagine that something would get built nowadays that wouldn't have a failsafe to be destroyed if it got too far, right?
Contingency plan.
Now, there are things that it's going to kill. Like, it's going to, I think you're going to see a drastic decrease in art, especially from a basic creative level. You're going to see a big drastic difference in digital marketing, basically graphic design, things like that. You're going to see a lot of jobs that people were reliant on go that way because it's so much easier.
Fair.
To go through AI. I mean, you can create an entire commercial using AI to tell exactly what you want, using any character you want.
The writing industry is already fucking sick of it.
Yep. So you're going to see, from a creative standpoint, it's going to make people lazy. But I think also that'll make us appreciate.
We're going into Wall-E territory.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Just big old babies.
Yeah. I mean, it really
taken
is.
care of by the robots because we've had a mutual acceptance of each other's existence.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
it's fun.
True.
You know,
but that's a hero.
At one point, the smart house becomes the smart chair, and everyone becomes 300 pounds.
One of the most inherently human things is to be lazy as possible.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that for us.
Yeah, and it's just one of
because there are aliens out there that are working their tits off, trying to be what we are.
Yeah. It is human nature to be as
some aliens,
lazy as possible.
Some aliens piloting a fucking 3-dimensional aircraft right now.
So
through untold space.
Yep.
And I'm sitting here talking about jerking off with my friend on a podcast. I love this shit. No, I love the alien conversation because it also tells you what type of person you're talking to.
Yeah.
Other people that I've had on the show I've had this conversation with. This is episode 270 something. Like, I've had other alien episodes. Everyone comes at it differently.
Yeah.
Everyone. And they always kind of bring their own chutzpah to it because they're just like, they're answering the question point blank. I just talk about aliens and I say, what do you think about? And they go in like a bunch of different directions. People talk about their favorite movies, their favorite books, their favorite media, their favorite examples. Then there are people who talk about it theoretically speaking. They go into all the different possible species. They go into the logistics and numbers. And then there are the people that go into the history, like the leaks and the documents and the footage and you know, I've even had people go into firsthand experiences.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had two people go into firsthand experiences. I'm going to butcher it and he hates me when I say it, but I have a buddy who had lost time.
Okay.
Driving his car in the middle of the night, bright lights, several shapes. You know, looks up, eyes glancing at the clock as he looks up. Bright light passes, looks back down. Time has changed several more minutes than it last looked.
Okay.
And he was confident he only looked up for a minute.
Okay.
You know, a 30-second exchange became 27 minutes.
Okay.
Wild. But then I have a buddy who just saw, like, lights.
Okay.
Like in a different country where it should not exist. It moved too fast. There was no motor. There was no sound.
Yeah.
And it was, like, close.
Yeah.
They were able to see that it was light.
Yeah.
And then it just disappeared.
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything. I don't know if I ever want to. I've watched too much X-Files.
Yeah.
I don't need that question answered.
Yeah.
I think I feel the same way about, like, the dead.
Okay.
Like, when people ask me, like, why I vehemently will not even be in a room as people doing a Ouija board is because I'm just like, I don't need this question asked and I don't trust anyone at this table enough to not manipulate that fact. And, like, if it's going to be an authentic experience, it's going to be one that I have alone at some point in my life that changes my entire belief system.
Yeah.
I don't need that question answered.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
If I met a fucking alien, it would change my life so much that, like, I don't know how I'd be able to, like, fucking live anymore. I'm just like some alien introduces himself to me and explains to me how his entire existence works, and suddenly I'm just like, shit?
I think the biggest thing that would happen is that we would realize, as far as we are now, because as of right now, we assume that we are basically the center of everything. We are the biggest thing in the universe. We are the center of everything. And I think how minuscule and how unimportant everything would seem immediately after meeting something like that.
Fair.
Would be the biggest cause, like would have the biggest impact, where all of a sudden we would feel so minuscule in everything that we experience, all of the small things, our personal interactions, all our bad breakups, all our shitty jobs that we have, everything would seem so minuscule and just so it would just seem so unimportant and so unnecessary if all of a sudden we realized that there is just universes and just, you know,
so many sources of media just argue against that, though.
Sure.
And I'd even, it's wild because even, you know, we confirmed it. Someone confirmed it.
Yeah.
Someone confirmed it,
Yeah.
and the world didn't give a shit.
They didn't give a shit. And it's wild. Like, there's so many different things. There's the advancements in military aircraft, things that we are doing military-wise now with hypersonic speeds and things like that, that people don't think that this is moving too fast in anything I've ever seen. But realistically, that's where we're at technology-wise now, is that there's military things now where they're moving faster than we ever seen possible to take down. Hypersonic rating speeds now that we're approaching levels now that are just outrageous. We're not speed of light, but we're way past the speed of sound now. And we're doing things military-wise that people are looking up and say, well, that doesn't look right. And it is, because it's so how far we advance technology-wise. Yeah. It is so beyond anything that we can possibly comprehend.
Things look only different for as long as, before it becomes something that's just, socially acceptable.
Exactly.
I could not have ever imagined that we would ever have little fucking flat computers in our pockets.
Yeah.
I grew up playing the Super Nintendo. Do you know how much work that fucking thing took? Yeah. Do you know how those cables worked and how those controllers worked and how shitty those visuals were? But for so much enjoyment of my life, that I have a fucking computer in my pocket every day.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, really,
I grew up with dial-up.
Right. I grew up way before the internet.
Yeah.
I grew up before the internet was even a thing. So, I'm still, Dewey Decimal System running around libraries.
All right, you beat me there.
Yeah, I'm running around libraries doing research.
I never got taught Dewey.
Yeah, so, that's where I'm at. So, it was fun to grow up and seeing our advances like that. I think it's going to keep going. I think we are astonished by things that we don't understand until we're shown them, and then as soon as we're shown them, we don't care about them anymore. So it's amazing. It's just
fucking true though.
Human beings have become so
complacent
and everything, right? So say all these recent alien sightings, say they're really just military testing things, right? And then a year from now, someone says, "Oh yeah, all these things that we just showed you that were flying around that you guys think were aliens, it's really just this." Just smoked out wild drone or something like that.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right? And then we're going to be like, oh, okay. And then we're not going to think about it.
And then we're not going to care.
We're not going to care anymore. And that's just literally where we're at as human beings now. And it's
I guess that's also a commentary on our attention and how we live our lives. It's until it becomes a direct adversarial threat to our livelihood.
Yeah.
We really don't give a shit about it.
I really imagine
it goes to sum up all the problems I have with the government. It's not bad enough for anyone to start a revolution, but it's bad enough to sit and bitch about.
It's crazy. So
until it directly affects your life. I'm talking War of the Worlds. There's a stomping tripod walking down the street. It steps on your car out of everyone else's in the street, and suddenly you're just like, how am I supposed to get to work?
Imagine that an alien aircraft takes off 500 years ago, farthest distances from the galaxy.
Sure.
Takes off and it's we know that there's people here. We're gonna go say hi. His whole entire life, it's we're gonna go say hi. We're gonna get there. Everybody's gonna be fuck yeah, a bunch of aliens, right?
Yeah.
They show up. We're like, hey, what's up? And then for 30 seconds, we're like, all right, what's going on? And they just move on. And these guys are like, what the fuck?
Ridley Scott wants you to believe that that's what Jesus was.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's fucking crazy. And that's really what's going to happen. I mean,
some dude comes down to hang out and we just fucking kill him.
He might be back already. He's hanging out and he came back and he went into a fucking 7-Eleven or something like that, and some guy was like, fuck this guy.
Shot him.
Get some clothes on, bitch. You know what I mean? Put some shoes on.
That's what I'm saying about aliens, though.
Yeah,
I'm saying
concept.
Roswell happened, and some farmer with a shotgun was just like, what the hell is that? And just fucking shot it.
The dude traveled 500 years.
He was finally, I've met another life form.
Yeah.
So I've been so lonely, and then a farmer just fucking shoots it.
It is completely.
That's a
realistic.
weird looking duck, and just fucking.
It's completely realistic.
It really is.
It really is.
It's sad, but it's funny.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it's funny. We've read so many. You got to listen to the other episodes of the Alien stuff on the show, because we've read so many fun stories. Like there's one where it's just like two aliens having a conversation as they look down at Earth, and they're just like, "Look at those fucking meat puppets walking around."
Yeah.
How do they talk? Well, they whistle through their meat using air. They use air to whistle through their meat. That's how they talk? Well, yeah, they squeeze themselves in a certain way, so push out air and intone a certain... Yeah. And the aliens are just like, fuck that, dude.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then there's another one where we read pretty much the same thing. Humanity somewhere in the future receives a note from some neighboring star system saying a threat is coming. We preemptively launch something in the direction of the threat. They send a scout that intercepts the threat, and says, completely unknowingly, just passing by it in space, it arrives on Earth and it goes, "So you got our warning about that other thing out there." And they're just like, "Wait, what?" And then that thing's home planet gets fucking blown up. And it's just like, what the fuck? We just warned you about something that's coming and you blew us up. And it's like, well, we thought you were the ones who sent the message. We thought the warning was you. We thought it was just a giant misconception.
I like it. That's something we would do too. That's Mars attacks.
100% something we would do.
Yeah. There's a lot of Mars attacks in that.
It's just fucking funny. The conversation can go in so many different ways.
Yeah.
I've read stories about monsters that were just like bubbles. Or aliens were like bubbles. They were just like creatures of just like spheres of air that just floated around. I've read stories where, real life uncanny events are happening. I've read stories of like rumors and like goss about someone in town and their crazy story. I read a story about a guy who got like ripped out of his body and an alien took it over for a second.
Okay.
And he just played fucking autopilot to everything his body was doing.
What was that Scarlett Johansson movie?
Under the Skin.
Under the Skin. That was a lot like that.
Well, Under the Skin, the book,
yeah,
is actually more of like a species kind of mimic thing, where like the alien puts on a human suit and comes down to kind of, I think, collect us, farm us.
Mm-hmm.
So it seduces men into the back of its van until it could trap them in a subspace that literally turns them into meat.
Yeah.
And it squishes them and it turns them into meat. And then she sends the meat back home to feed her people. And she keeps farming, but then she sees like children.
Yeah.
And she sees like a man with like a gross like facial deformity. And she feels like bad for him because she's like seducing him to kill himself in the back of this van.
This is from the book.
This is the book.
Yeah.
And this is kind of how there's almost this metaphor for like us versus lower life forms.
Okay.
How we farm lower life forms. Cows, chickens, just how we just fucking like eat everything. And it just ends with like another one coming down just being like, oh, you got caught up in caring about humanity so much that like you're not fit for this job anymore.
Yep.
It was like bang.
Gotcha.
And that's just the end of it.
Okay.
And it's just wild.
Yep.
Because in my head, I don't know. That's just an interesting way to think about aliens.
Mm-hmm.
I would never think that the farming is something like literal, like farmers with crops. Like watching people grow until they're a certain enough age where they could be traded in for their meat.
Yeah.
You know, it's an interesting thought. It's fun.
Yep.
I like the movie The Arrival
Okay.
with Amy Adams,
Yep.
Jamie Renner. It's fun. It's a fun way to think about it. That they don't see time linearly,
Yeah.
and we misinterpret that
Yep.
as humans, but we're still able to have a conversation. I also like Annihilation.
Yeah. It's a different one.
It's a solid fucking movie. But I grew up with shit like The Thing and Alien
Sure.
and fucking science, which
Yep.
haunts me to this day.
I mean, our things like Alien, those are our basis of what we literally think aliens are. And that's, you know,
Creepy thing, eat your face.
yeah, even going back before that. I mean, we've been doing movies about aliens, you know, War of the Worlds, and,
Oh yeah,
you know, for...
I think War of the Worlds is like 1930s or something.
You know, so, I mean, we've been doing this for now for 100 years. Before, there's documents and stuff like that beforehand. But, you know, hieroglyphics and things like that. That kind of point to
yeah.
weird sky things and
Yeah,
things like that. But,
when Gnarly Charlie and I did an Alien episode, all he wanted to talk about was like real examples. So we talked about like the entire city that's like underwater off the coast of Greece.
Yeah.
That had like way better technology than any other neighboring country.
okay.
And everyone thinks it's the fucking
Atlantis.
everyone thinks it's like the reason Atlantis is like a rumor because that city actually exists.
Yeah.
Temples all around the world all have the same structure, but they
Mhm.
never met one another. So like, who taught them how to build like that?
Yep.
There's just no way that they all invented the wheel at the same time with the same shape with the same thing. You know, like it's too convenient.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking bones, skulls, things that have been left behind,
Mhm.
the African elongating skull process.
Yep.
Why would you want your head to shape that way? Well, because we saw something one time that helped us that had its head shaped that way.
Yep.
Like, there's just too many claims of, like, gods, quote-unquote gods, of younger forms of humanity looking up to something that was both benevolent and far too intelligent for us to understand, that either originated or maintained the sky, the stars, the space, and it's just wild. There's too many fucking unknown examples there that don't have solutions for someone to not look at all of those and be like, fake, 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 fake. Like, no. Like, these are bones, these are examples, these are places, these are things. This is time.
Yeah.
This is time recorded by men's instruments. Like, it's I understand the argument. It's fucked up that with the technology we have, no one can film with a steady fucking hand.
Yep.
And that there can't be multiple people all filming the same thing at the same time who all submit it to the internet at the same time.
Yep.
That everyone around the world notices it at the same time,
Yep.
despite not being there.
Yep.
Because let me tell you, if an alien fucking ship was within sight anywhere around the world, it would have global fucking coverage.
Yep.
The argument therein is that the technology is too crazy that it can never be caught on our forms of capturing. Our cameras move too slow, our motor functions aren't fast enough. I've seen way too much Navy footage of things blurring past ships flying inhuman speeds.
Yep.
And then going straight into the ocean and literally making a splash.
Yeah.
Like, there's simply too much shit out there. And that's also part of the problem.
Yep. a lot of debunking. There's so much debunking going on rather than everybody's looking to debunk everything, and that's not a bad.
It's a
way
human concept because you're trying to rationalize it. But in this situation with a soft confirmation, and I think I have to say it that way, because part of me is thinking like maybe we're getting punked. Yes, aliens totally exist, but maybe the government saying they exist is them punking us a little bit. So that they can finally shut everyone up about it. Yeah. They leak it out slowly overnight like a little gas. Yep. Like a little gas leak in a house.
I mean, it's just
so that when the house explodes, no one's fucking surprised.
It's really just a congressional hearing that pops up on C-SPAN.
It is.
And then it's gone. That's it.
Until one day it doesn't.
Yep.
And that's what I'm here for, folks. I'm here with Scutch MacGee for Judgment Day. And by judgment, I mean alien judgment of mankind, in which we all fail for jelking and gooning too much. Do you know the definitions of jelking and gooning?
I've heard of gooning before. I haven't heard of jelking.
What about docking?
I haven't heard of docking either. I'm old, man.
The kids have fun words that I like to pick up on every once in a while.
From what I understand, gooning is like some dude that just basically just like lives in a dungeon of a room and basically just doesn't get out of it. No, that's not what gooning is. Like it's basically like a jerk off room. Isn't that basically what gooning is?
Urban Dictionary. Oh, we're gonna go in order. I'm gonna give you jelking first. Okay. Jelqing. The art of creating a longer penis through stroking exercises for months and years. I've been jelking my cock for so long and it's still a hard 3 inches, but I keep jelking because it's fun to do it. Let me see gooning real quick.
You gotta. This is the one I had to know. This is what I had all wrong. Okay.
Gooning is the act of being in perpetual edge, which is right to the point of masturbating until you're gonna come, but you just stay on the edge for hours.
I was so far off.
Gooning is just a porn addict who edges for hours on end, yet will never achieve orgasm for weeks and or months.
I was so far off.
Oh, I thought jelking was a dick-growing exercise, but it never works. There's like an actual... Let me see. It's an exercise believed to increase the size of your penis. It consists of grasping the semi-flaccid form of your penis at its base, and then while holding it tightly... stretching it and forcing the blood to the head of the penis while slowly moving your hand toward the head. The exercise originated from African tribesmen who wished to elongate their genitalia, and reported growth of up to 10 inches above average has been claimed. And then docking. I know the answer to this one. I don't have to look it up. It's when 2 men, uncircumcised...
No, okay, nope.
Go tip to tip and then wrap their uncircumcised wrappers over each other's penises.
Oh my god. I did not know you know that one.
Oh, docking is good.
Okay.
Gooning, jelking, and docking.
Okay.
You now understand what the kids are all about these days.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you want to read some stories?
Yeah. Whatever gets me out of that.
Whatever gets you out of gooning, jelking, and docking. Fair enough. All right. A Mist Between Blue and Gray.
Yeah.
It's a fun title.
It is.
I don't know what it means.
Okay.
So we're going to figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
A mist between blue and gray from Creepypasta.
The one thing I know, perhaps the last thing I know to be true, is that there's a very fine mist between one dimension and the next, and crossing that mist is never good, because even a shift in the smallest detail offers magnitudes of misfortune. Because hard alcohol is just so damned easy, was the last thing I remember telling myself before drinking into the shiny brass redness of the night. I woke up that morning, at the previous evening, beginning to tunneling its worm-like way back into my brightening memory. I drank too much. Again. I drank alone. Again. The evening's memories were dim and blurry like dirty binoculars, but a few vivid memories of taking one more drink, just one more, kept creeping into my head. My head throbbed and my stomach was on the fritz. It was Wednesday morning and my wife was still across the country on work.
It's Wednesday, my dudes.
My son, just 2, was crying in his crib. It was about 20 minutes past the time he normally woke up. How long had he been awake? I licked my lips, and along the right corner where my upper and lower came together was a dried spot of drool that tasted something like between whiskey, cigarettes, and vomit. I jumped out of bed already feeling like an asshole before I even brushed my teeth, and began toward my boy's room. I opened the door and the volume of his cries seemed to quadruple in my already throbbing head. I can see tears rolling down his cheeks, which means he has been awake for more than just a few minutes. God, I'm an asshole. His hands are up in the air and his fingers are curling and straightening in an effort to hurry me to him. I love his tiny fingers, but I can't get past the pushing in my head that is exasperated when I bend over to pick him up. My vision goes spotty for a moment as I lift him to my shoulder, then full black. Then it slowly returns in unfurling, pounding pulses. My son's cries lessen over the next few minutes as I carry him out of the living room, where I grab him a yogurt and a cup of milk, put on a TV show, and pray that he gives me a few minutes of peace to gather myself and get ready for work. My son miraculously seems to comply with my prayer. I head upstairs and start to shower. Staring at myself in the mirror as the water heats up, I see a pair of gray, bloodshot eyes staring back at me, along with dark bags under the eyes and significantly too much facial scrub to pull off a 5 o'clock shadow chic. I consider punching the mirror in frustration that I've done this to myself again, then think better of it. Instead, I take my clothes off and jump in the shower. 20 minutes later, the hangover of something else continues to cast its eerie shadow across every move I make. Even as I load my son into his car seat on a day that is cloudless, there seems to be an omnipotent gray hovering over each spectral scene. It is depressing and ominous. The drive to daycare doesn't feel any better, and I can't help but think that this is something beyond any standard hangover. It is darker, more malevolent somehow. But something tells me that if I can safely get my son to daycare, and then just take a deep breath, things will begin to go blue again. That's what my wife calls it. She says, whenever you're having a bad day, just think blue thoughts. She loves blue, and so do I. It's the color of water and the sky and peace, and I haven't seen so much of it lately. I pull up to daycare in my standard suburban vehicle, exactly what you'd expect to see in any upper middle class neighborhood. White SUV, the make and model doesn't matter. If it's reasonably clean, they are waiting for him outside. My brow furrows in confusion that there is a welcoming party today. It's not that this never happens, but it is rare. Maybe they just saw me pulling up and decided to come greet us. Either way, this welcoming doesn't help the peculiar sense of unease this day has already greeted me with, especially because the smiles on their faces look plastic. There is nothing, no humanity behind them that I can sense. They are not smiles of happiness, smiles of necessity, smiles of desire. They might as well be doll faces. Welcome to the dollhouse. Want to come play? I hesitantly greet the welcoming party, Miss Greta and Miss Nina. They say hello in a very strange way. It was hollow, and it bounced off my ears and intensified the throbbing in my head. I sped past them with my son in one arm, and my other hand against my ear to dull the noise. It didn't help. They followed me in, now saying nothing, a plastic smile still glued to their faces. The inside of the daycare was listless today. Like other daycares, this one, if memory serves, was full of bright colors and laughing, screaming children and welcoming women who were bright and cheery. Lots and lots of blue. I'm not positive, but that is what I remember. My wife usually takes him to daycare. Today the daycare was gray, with splotches of black. I suddenly realized that I am sweating. This could surely be from the drinking a bottle of whiskey last night. This seems like something else. Several dozen eyes are on me now. Teachers, students, administrators. They're all looking at me, and each one has a plastic smile. They want me to leave, and I'm prepared to give them what they want. But my son? Is this all in my head? I need to clear it. Yes, we've been taking him to this daycare for almost a year and a half. I'll drop him off and then leave for work early. I'll pick him up early and get him out of this gray, listless, strange day. We'll hunker down at home and turn things back to blue. I leave him begrudgingly. I don't like leaving him, but I need to get a fresh take on the day. I need to recenter and hopefully realize that this is all just in my head and that the day is not turned rotten, turned sour. When I leave work later that day, things have brightened a bit. The hangover has worn off and cleared my paranoia, I think. The throbbing in my head has decreased almost to a dull nothing. But at my office, I realized there was no one there. Maybe no one at all. Can that be right? There was no one at work for the entire day. My office is small and sometimes people work from home or travel, but no one at all. I suppose not. I now also realize that my commute to work was basically empty. Have I seen anyone at all since leaving my son's daycare? I think not, and I fear not. Oh God, that can't be right. I am driving back to my son's daycare, and even though it's only early afternoon, the sky over the empty suburban highway is turning a bullet gray that is typically only reserved for an overcast twilight. What is becoming of this place? This cloudless, blue, sleepy town full of well-to-do families had suddenly become a grating ghost town of pallid purgatory. As I got closer to daycare, I drove alongside groves of trees that had been full and green, but are now arthritic skeletons that creak in shadow. I pull up to the daycare parking lot, and a deep fear creeps over me that I cannot shake. I think that something has happened to my son, something sinister, not accidental. A lone cloud ominously hovers over the daycare, casting even more darkness on the already dreary world. I see a set of eyes, maybe two, peering through the blinds, drawn up the front window of the daycare. My nerves are twitching, and I bolt out of the car and toward the door. I open the door. There is no one at the window, but the color of the world has changed. It is bright again. Colors are vibrant, kids are laughing and screaming playfully, and the woman, Miss Nancy, at the front desk, is bright and cheery. No sign of a plastic smile. She's wearing a sweater that says, "Mama needs coffee," and gives me a big smile as I approach with confusion and happiness spread all the way across my face. I can see lots of blue again. "Mr. Grissom, so good to see you," she says. A perfectly human smile heads steadily through the words. I am disoriented by the brilliance of color and happiness that I feel. The world has returned. People have returned, and my son in this wonderful, happy place. It has never seemed so wonderful to me before, but now I realize just how beautiful it is. Still unsteady, I put my hands on the desk for a bounce and attempt to return to Miss Nancy's smile, but fail, producing only an awkward baring of teeth and uncertainty. "Yes, hi, Miss Nancy. Thank you. I'm here to pick up my son." The warm, loving smile of Miss Nancy that has helped to completely transform my mood is suddenly replaced by a look of dismay. Her eyebrows squinch and her mouth line flattens. Let me check." She turns to her computer and types a few keys. No, Devin wasn't dropped off today. Her eyes remain fixed on the computer for a moment, and raise to meet mine with fear and pleading that there is a simple reason for this. Perhaps his mom took him for the day out? Her eyes say, but I know that is not what happened. I am back in hell, no longer purgatory, a bright one, full of blue and people, and even with the warmth and brightness all around me, I am frantic and frozen all at the same time. My son isn't here. I don't argue with Miss Nancy because I don't know that it is true. I didn't drop him off there. It was like here, but it wasn't exactly. In some ways, not even close. For the last 5 years, I retraced my steps from that morning, trying to find out that other daycare, what was it? I never believed in other dimensions or realities, but I do now. There is another world out there, perhaps dozens, perhaps infinite, and they live right next to us, a shadow away, a breath. How did I pass into it, and how did I get back? How did I bring my sweet Devin there? Where were those things with plastic smiles that took my son? I think the doorways in the daycare are near it, but I am not allowed to go there. Even though the charges were dropped against me, they couldn't find a body after all. I'm still not allowed to go to within 1,000 feet of that daycare. I don't blame them after the story I've told. I can't recreate it. I've got to get back to that other world. My wife left me. I also don't blame her. She thinks that it had something to do with the drinking. And while that's possible, I've also emptied my fair share of whiskey bottles since that day 5 years ago to try and retrace my steps from that strange sequence. That also hasn't shown any promise. No, the world is now constantly full of color, and I'm alone. But I've got to find my way back there. I can't imagine what happened to him, to my Devin. I rarely sleep, and when I close my eyes, I picture those plastic smiles. What were those things? My God.
That was a fun fucking story.
It was fun.
That was a bit like what you were talking about, how alien can be something as simple as just other people.
Yeah.
They're from a different planet. They're from 500 fucking years of flying, to our knowledge, away from where our planet is. And yet they just show up, they look close enough, they come on down, they blend right in. Bob's your uncle.
Even the idea of interdimensional.
Interdimensional is cool.
Like this idea.
Twilight Zone.
Yeah. It's also fun. Stepping in one reality and out the other.
I've read other stories like that on the show, for sure. For sure. Love a good alien abduction where everything tries to kind of like mimic reality.
Yep.
We've done that on other Alien episodes for sure. One of them was like a diner in the middle of nowhere. And like when people would stop there, like the signs wouldn't make sense, all the writing would be wrong. Mm-hmm. And they'd walk in and there'd just be figures and next to pictures of things that looked like hamburgers and milkshakes, you know, something like out of the 50s.
Yep.
And like the waiter comes out and doesn't seem to be like walking but like gliding along the floor. You know, yep. just uncanny.
Yep.
Shit. I love it. I think it's great. I'm going to read a quick one. This is not a place of honor. From Creepypasta. Oh shit, I went the other way. It's Soviet Union. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. I'm not going to read that the entire way. It would be fun to read that the entire time, but I'm not going to do that. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, huge numbers of formally classified government documents were made available to the public for the first time. Such was the glut of these documents that even now, many of them have yet to be fully translated into English by historians and other scholars. One such document, a 246-page report for the Ministry of Medium Machine Building, later renamed the Ministry of Atomic Energy and Industry of the USSR, on the topic of radioactive waste disposal, was only translated last year. Although the document was very dryly written and received almost no attention from either the media or academia, it includes a description of an incident which, if accepted at face value, undermines much of what is to be known of the history of life on Earth. The uranium-238 waste produced by nuclear power plants is highly toxic, radioactive substance having a half-life of approximately 4.5 billion years. And for this reason, such waste must be stored in the most remote, geologically stable locales possible, as it must be isolated from human populations and groundwater supplies effectively forever. Toward this end, the government of Premier Alexei Kosygin initiated a project to identify an optimal site for uranium-238 disposal in 1975. Geological survey results were inputted into an algorithm that evaluated sites in the USSR based on 22 different criteria, and eventually the team of researchers determined a list of 500 ideal disposal sites, including a bare and nondescript hillock in the Great Lakes Basin desert steppe close to the border of Mongolia. God damn you, Mongolia. In 1977, the ministry dispatched a team of geologists to the site to conduct a feasibility study. Hoping to gain a better idea of the local geological features, the scientists, led by one Grigory Lermonotov, an academic at Leningrad State University, drilled a number of narrow boreholes into the surface, into which they dropped sounding probes equipped with ground-penetrating radar. To their surprise, their result indicated a smooth wall of metal buried at a depth of approximately 1,400 meters. And by collecting data at several more sites, they determined that this wall was roughly hemispherical, with a diameter of approximately 4 kilometers. They also discovered an anomalous signature beneath one of the points at which a sounding was made, which made Lermonotov somewhat reluctantly speculated may have been a door or an entry hatch. Intrigued by the discovery of such a large and regularly shaped structure deep beneath the ground, the ministry decided to investigate further, and so Lermonotov returned to the site, The following summer, at the head of a somewhat larger expedition, this time armed with a large drill and a team of mining engineers. By August 5th, 1978, the drill had successfully bored a hole down to the metal surface directly over the site of the supposed hatch. One member of the expedition, a Georgian spelunker by the name of Amiran Cholakavshvili, was then lowered into the hole on a mechanical winching apparatus together with several tanks of oxygen, some scientific equipment, a powerful flashlight, and a quartz 8mm movie camera. The film that he collected is thought to be no longer existent, but a few frames from it were reproduced as figures in the report. The first, taken whilst midway down the borehole, depicts the light from his flashlight reflecting off of a gleaming metal surface far below. The second frame was taken after he had already reached the bottom of the pit and swept some of the remaining dirt off of the metal with a gloved hand. This figure reveals that the metal was iridescent and highly reflective. The report notes that at that point he attempted to perform optical emission spectroscopy on the exposed metal, but found that he was unable to generate a spark between the metal and his electrode. As such, the precise chemical composition of the metal remains unknown. Sweeping the dirt off more of the metal, he found that there was indeed an entry hatch, which was shaped like an equilateral triangle, roughly 1.5 meters to a side, a picture of which was included in the document. The hatch was inscribed with a series of symbols or pictographs in a language that has yet to be deciphered. In the center of the hatch were 3 small circular indentations, also arranged into a triangle. At this point, he returned to the surface for further instructions, at which time he submitted his film to his superiors. The report notes that Lermontov, eager to get to the bottom of this mystery, sent a communique to his superiors in Moscow requesting that high-yield explosives and demolitions experts be dispatched to his site in order to blow open the hatch. Other unnamed members of the team offered objections to his direct approach, noting that they did not know the provenance of the object nor the effect that an explosion might have upon its metal, but these objections were overruled. Given the remoteness of the site, Lermontov's superiors advised him that any logistical support would take approximately a week to arrive. The researchers were ordered to stay put until then, and during that time, medical records included with the report indicate that the spelunker was prescribed sedatives from the infirmary tent on 3 occasions in order to treat unspecified nocturnal disturbances. In quotes. It is perhaps noteworthy that there is no record of the spelunker having been prescribed such medication prior to his descent into the borehole, but his mental state is not described. What is mentioned is that approximately 6 days after his initial descent, the spelunker decided to do it again late at night without either authorization or support. While almost nothing is known of his individual psychology and temperament, it seems remarkable that an experienced spelunker would engage in such reckless behavior. Indeed, together with his previously unmentioned treatment for nocturnal disturbances, it does not seem unreasonable to speculate that he may not have been in his right mind at that point, and that, indeed, he may have even been sleepwalking. Whatever his motivation, he apparently succeeded in rappelling down the side of the borehole at the next morning. The Soviet scientists were shocked to discover that the hatch at the bottom of the pit had somehow been opened wide. Moreover, the Georgian explorer had apparently purloined a movie camera, a reel of film, and several pieces of scientific equipment, including a Geiger counter to take with him on his descent. It remains unclear how he managed to pry open the hatch. Attempts to establish radio contact with him proved unsuccessful for nearly 2 hours. Then, just before a rescue party was to be lowered in after him, he was seen to emerge from out of the hemisphere dragging a medium-sized ceramic canister. The hatch immediately closed once again behind him, after which he seemed to collapse upon the hemisphere's metal surface. Lermontov then dispatched his rescue party to bring the spelunker with them out of the borehole. The spelunker remained alive for a further 3 hours following his rescue, but spent this time in a delirious state, occasionally babbling unintelligibly but unable to answer questions about either his inexplicable behavior or what he had found down in the dome. Physically, he showed symptoms of severe radiation poisoning, with burns covering much of his body, in addition to other abnormalities. In particular, he was described as suffering from extreme necrosis of his lower legs, with the bones in his feet being described as almost chalk-like. One doctor notes in his report that, if she had not known better, she would have concluded that he had been suffering from extremely poor circulation in his lower extremities for months or even years. It should be noted that neither necrosis nor osteoporosis are known symptoms of radiation exposure. The report does not speculate as to the cause, but notes that the results of a post-mortem toxicology test remains pending at the time of the writing. Unfortunately, the film captured by Mr. Chulikashvili fared little better than the spelunker himself. The report notes that most of the film reel showed damaged characteristic of exposure to high-energy gamma radiation. Nevertheless, a few segments of the film did manage to survive, with only minor damage, and the material contained therein is potentially very telling. Notably, the report includes descriptions of 2 brief clips appearing to show the interior of the chamber, as well as frames from these clips. The first clip is approximately 8 seconds long, and begins with a shot of a distinctive triangular porthole seen from below and illuminated with a flashlight. The interior wall of the dome appears to be made of the same iridescent material as the exterior. The cinematographer, presumably the spelunker himself, then pans the camera down to reveal a room full of containers of various shapes and sizes, ranging from standard steel drums bearing radioactivity warning symbols and text in Latin, Cyrillic, simplified Chinese, Hindi, Arabic writing systems, to more elaborate containers of unknown material and manufacture bearing unrecognizable labels in unidentified scripts. The second clip is 19 seconds long and a good deal more difficult to decipher. The report describes the camera work as extremely unsteady and prone to unaccountable optical distortions, but it seems to show the cinematographer attempting to make a rapid egress from the chamber, scrambling over fallen containers toward a cord dangling from the hatch. The ceramic canister carried out of the dome by the spelunker was also recovered from the borehole. The canister was cylindrical in form, 60 centimeters high by 25 centimeters in diameter, and was identified as being a standard-rated medium-sized drum for radioactive waste disposal. Upon analysis of spectrographic data, this drum was found to contain uranium-238 and lead-206. That's a wordy fucking story.
Dude, that's wild.
As well as trace quantities of several other isotopes, most notably uranium-234 and thorium-230, all of which are along the decay pathway for uranium-238. The relative concentrations of these elements indicated that the canister had been placed for approximately 2.1 billion years. This is my nightmare. The report concludes by noting that further research will be necessary before drawing any conclusions as to the nature of the incident, the provenance of the hemisphere, the contents of other containers, or how such artifacts, including some of manifestly recent design, could have been underground for so many years. Mention is made of a forthcoming follow-up report from a second expedition, but a record of this report has not yet been discovered in the declassified literature. One final note should be made concerning the aforementioned babbles made by the spelunker in his final hours of life. Apparently thinking that the spelunker may have been speaking in his native Georgian, academic Lermontov ordered that his utterances be recorded on a Cheka reel-to-reel tape recorder for later translation. Whilst that hope proved forlorn, the recording is still extant, and it was recently discovered, quite by accident when attempting to play this recording, that one of the spelunker's utterances was, however, improbably intelligible in English when played backwards. The statement was, "This is not a place of honor." It is not known whether the subterranean dome and its mystery contents still exist today.
I feel like that's almost a realistic story. Like, it's something like that seems almost completely possible. And the reason why I say that is because I feel like as many things as that we see in the United States, where we're based out of, there's so many unheard things that happen around the world and how vast it is.
That's why At the Mountains of Madness is like my favorite fucking story ever. No. Because it's just like, what fucking exists in Antarctica? What was it before it was
iced over?
A just cold,
yeah, but it's underneath
context.
You know, billions and tons of ice. What is underneath all that ice? You know,
I love that.
I do. I love that concept.
I love that.
I do too. I do love that concept.
This is a fun title. It's a fun one. It's a feel-good holiday flick. It's called The Real Reason My Husband Shot Himself. It's from Creepypasta. This is a Creepypasta alien episode. I hope you're enjoying it. I hate snow. I hate the way it silently descends from the sky. Those fuckers. I hate how cold it is to the touch. I even hate the puddle it leaves behind when it melts. But most of all, I hate it because it reminds me of the night my husband was taken from me. You're going to be my husband, okay?
Okay.
Right. It began with a power outage. I suddenly heard Dan? Shouting some of the trademark expletives from the adjacent room, muffled only by the thin wall dividing us. On the days that he was scheduled to work from home, we generally stayed out of each other's way, so I was still in bed and mindlessly flipping through some catalog when he came stomping down the corridor. For a man in his 30s, he sure acted like a toddler whenever something inconvenienced him, though it did make him easy to read, which I found myself appreciating. I begrudgingly abandoned the warm comfort of our bed and rolled onto my bare feet. "Everything all right, babe?" I called out while scanning the floor for my slippers, only to receive more incoherent ranting in response. I could hear him pacing outside the door until he eventually joined me in the bedroom. Before I had a chance to say what was going on, he raised his finger toward me and then used those blue, albeit partially bloodshot eyes of his to gesture towards the phone, still pressed to his ear. His tone switched from raving man-child to professional in an instant.
"Yes, of course. I understand, sir. I will. Thank you. Have a great weekend, sir."
The distinctive sound of the call ending prompted Dan to breathe easy again. He wiped his face with his palm, released a groan towards the ceiling, and then looked down at me.
"Power's gone,"
he said, flicking the nearest light switch on and off, as if I wouldn't have believed him otherwise.
"Boss says I'll have to finish my shift at the office if it doesn't come back in a few hours."
I frowned and turned towards the frost-glazed window. It was late in the afternoon, and the snowstorm from yesterday wasn't showing any signs of letting up. The backyard was completely buried underneath a pale blanket of snow. Only the heads of a few lawn ornaments still broke the surface. Needless to say, I wasn't too keen on letting Dan go out there. We contacted the utility company for our area, though they acknowledged that there had indeed been an outage. They were unable to give us a time frame as to when it was going to be fixed. It was an expected response given the hazardous weather outside, but still no less discouraging.
"At least we know it's not the wiring this time,"
my husband said while digging through his section of shared closet. Sweaters, scarves, jackets, various other clothing items were being haphazardly strewn about. Some of them I hadn't seen him wearing since our college days, back when he used to take me skiing. "Isn't forcing you to go out during a goddamn blizzard a health violation or something?"
"You're exaggerating. Besides, if I don't, they'll just wait a week and find an excuse to fire me anyway. I can't afford that now, especially now."
I huffed and glanced down. My swollen belly was poking out from underneath the loose shirt that I had slept in. I was 8 months pregnant at the time. Being on maternity leave, I still got a paycheck at the end of each month, but I felt guilty that Dan was the only one actually working, especially since I've never been a good housewife. As he reached back and placed his large hand over my stomach, a familiar sense of ease washed over me. I smiled. I knew it was temporary, but I held on to the feeling for so long as it lasted. By 8 p.m., it became apparent that the power wasn't going to come back. I moved some of my blankets over to the living room and saw that Dan had graciously stoked the fireplace for me. In any other circumstance, his standing in the dim ambient glow could have even been perceived as somewhat enticing. Unfortunately, any such inclinations were offset by the prospect of his approaching departure.
Should be back after midnight. Call me if you need anything, but try not to waste your battery. Who knows how long this outage is going to last.
He said as he zipped up his jacket. Yeah, I know. Come here. We exchanged a brief kiss, and I waved him off in a display of feigned indifference. In reality, the thought of being left alone in a cold, dark, and empty house unnerved me. I couldn't let him see that. The last thing I wanted was to give Dan even more reasons to worry about me. I threw a blanket over my shoulders and huddled closer to the crackling fire, seeking comfort in its warmth. The jingling of his keys resonated from the cramped entrance hall behind me, followed by the sound of the front door opening and closing. Having mentally prepared myself for an evening of quiet and solitude, imagine my surprise when Dan came storming back inside. I stood up just in time to witness his shadowy outline slamming the door shut and bracing against it. "Babe?" I meekly inquired. I used my phone as an improvised flashlight and pointed it directly at him, only to be taken back by the expression of horror that was plastered across his face. His eyes were nearly bulging out of their sockets, and his mouth was hanging agape, frozen in a mute scream. He was trembling, but it was evidently wasn't from the cold. Whatever stood beyond the door had traumatized him, broken him. Dan didn't react even as I rushed to his side, just kept staring onward. He didn't even blink. Getting him to budge was like trying to move a statue, not helped by the fact that he was about 90 pounds heavier than me. "Dan, this isn't funny." Oh, Daniel. Damn, Daniel. This isn't funny. I hadn't called him by his full first name in years. It felt even wrong coming out of my mouth, but I needed some way of conveying to him that he was seriously freaking me out. Some part of me held out hope that it was all just some stupid act. I just lightly tapped my palm against his scruffy cheek. "Just tell me what's wrong, please." Nothing. Despite all my efforts, I ultimately failed to coax a single word out of him, so I did what I felt was next most logical step and decided to call for help. I dialed 911 and made a point of putting the call on speaker, hoping that hearing another voice would have somehow snapped my husband out of his trance, or perhaps made him realize how seriously I was taking this. And that was the single biggest mistake of my life. Instead of the familiar ringing tone, there was a high-pitched electronic shriek. The closest thing I can compare it to would be a coil whine, only amplified to an ear-popping squealing that kept increasing in volume. I felt as if my brain was boiling in its own juices, unable to process all the sequences and patterns being force-fed to me by the signal. And worst of all, some of the frequencies began to take shape in my head, forming into strands of alien code. But if they were so foreign, then why did I recognize them? How could I possibly have known that two perpendicular lines and a semicircle are all that it takes to summarize our entire existence? Our biology, our history, our achievements and purpose, our birth and inevitable extermination. Me and you. Only you are not you, rather you are meant to be you. Even the concept of you is just a symptom of a greater misconception. I am you just as much as you are you, which consequently means that you are me. But if I am you and you are me, then who or what are we? In a desperate act of preserving what little remained of my sanity, I threw my phone to the floor and proceeded to stomp over it until it had no signal anymore. Its cracked screen flickered beneath the impact of my heel, and its artificial life got snuffed out in an instant. Drenched in near-perfect darkness yet again, I cupped both sides of my pulsating skull and slumped against the wall closest to me. A picture frame fell off its perch and shattered against the tiles, a symbolic representation of the fracturing of my own psyche. Warm tears streamed down my cheeks, only they weren't tears at all. They were viscous, more congealed, and tasted of copper and blood. My husband wasn't by my side anymore. Of course he wasn't. He was upstairs, looking for the gun that his dad had given us before we moved. I always hated that thing. It was probably taking him a while to remember that it was in the cupboard I had stuffed it, then an additional couple of seconds of fumbling with the safety, and then it was over. I barely registered the bang over the residual buzzing in my ears, not that I needed to. The image of him laying face down with a leaking hole in his head was being projected against the back of my eyelids. I was meant to see it. To see him lifelessly sprawled in the middle of our own bedroom, gray matter splattered against the tacky wallpaper and blood seeping between the floorboards, the empty husk of a man that had glimpsed the primordial truth and sought to escape it. Though I wanted to, I couldn't blame him for it.
I inspected my own hands through red-tinted lenses. They were our hands now, down to the last blemish, line, and wrinkle. I placed them over the writhing growth inside my stomach. It settled down, and there was a heartbeat, loud, rhythmic, and clear. It told me what I needed to do. There was no running from it anymore. Each step felt more cumbersome than the last. Or was it my consciousness weighing me down? The floor no longer felt solid. Instead, it melted and warped beneath me, as if the house itself was trying to dissuade me from leaving. I'd yelled for it to let me go, and it flinched, but only for a moment, before continuing to ensnare me in its muck of willful ignorance. Lauren. There was a dark mass crawling down the staircase behind me. A staircase that didn't belong there to begin with. It was bulbous black and covered in amorphous growths, some of which used to pull itself towards me. Among its pustules and inky tendrils, however, was a face. A weird face that I had once loved, now stretched and twisted, contorted into grimaces that expressed an entire spectrum of conflicting emotions. Perhaps it didn't know what it was meant to feel. Neither did I. But in the midst of the churning abyss, there remained one constant. A pair of blue eyes.
I was going to say, a fish monster, tentacle body.
Yeah.
With my husband's face on his abdomen.
Killing Early Hudson.
Drowning Early Hudson in the last 5 minutes.
I know none of this makes sense. But you have to understand. We, this version of us, were never meant to peer past the one-way mirror. This is where they live. They thrive between the material and immaterial, fulfilling their role as unbiased observers until the experiment that is humanity reaches its final stage. The three of us had inadvertently breached the protocol and were thus deemed compromised, contaminated. Then again, maybe we were meant to go off script, and it was all a test to see how we would react to the exposed to the void that our species had once been a part of. Daniel denied it, and was of no further use to them, but me and Max, my precious baby boy, faced it head on and survived. What happened next remains a blur. I remember how cold the doorknob felt in my hand. I remember a blinding, all-encompassing radiance and alternating number of silhouettes standing in front of it. Whenever I close my eyes, I attempt to picture them. They appear to me as if both one entity and the entire hive, as if individuality as a concept doesn't apply to them. Isolating a single one of their features is impossible, as they simultaneously possess every trait in existence and none at all. Compared to you and me, they are alien in the truest, most literal sense of the world. Our neighbors found me the following morning while shoveling snow on their porch. I had been sitting in the middle of the sidewalk, muttering nonsense and refusing to acknowledge anyone or anything. Once the remains of my husband were also discovered, it became apparent that I had suffered from a mental breakdown as a result of his spontaneous suicide. Though I had to part with a few of my frostbitten toes, I eventually recovered. I even managed to safely deliver Max just a month later. As expected, nobody believes my recollection of what actually happened, and I've spent the last decade of my life trying to forget it myself. So, why bring it up now? As of today, it's been exactly 10 years since Dan left us. The lights in my new apartment have been flickering for the past few hours, and I'm scared to use my phone. I won't let them have our son, too.
Oh, damn.
Damn.
That story wasn't as long as I thought it was going to be. But you picked up at the great fucking time.
It was good.
Apparently those are the only 3 stories.
Nice.
As far as the last Alien episode goes, did a pretty good job.
Good.
Which one did you like the most?
Of those 3 stories?
Yeah.
I actually like the realistic. I like the realistic of the second story.
The hole in the ground.
Yep, I kind of like that one, even though it's probably the wordiness of all the stories that you read.
Yeah, it's really fucking wordy.
That was a wild story to try to read.
But at the same time, it was interesting.
But
it was thought-provoking.
I like that it was almost written as if like it was a scientific
document.
journal.
Yeah.
It makes it feel more realistic in that aspect of it. And I think of all the stories, that probably is the most realistic, that we have no idea what is... We have ideas, but the reality is we have no idea how long this planet's been around, what can be possible underneath of it.
That's a fun concept, because it's like something could have predated dinosaurs, you know?
Sure.
There could have been an age of a completely different human race existing on a much earlier form of Earth millions of years ago, and the only remnants are like a mile down into the fucking center of the Earth. Sure. And we will never find them until we dig deep enough.
I mean, the realistically, we have no...
The ocean.
We have no knowledge of anything, essentially. I mean, our knowledge is so limited.
Well, our knowledge is relative.
So, it is completely possible that some form of life that is 4 or 5 billion years ahead of us, as far as technology-wise, and billions of years, could literally just showed up into a planet that showed signs of being able to be habitable, and just dropped random microorganisms onto the planet, dipped out, just in the same way as somebody stopping at a rest stop to take a piss on the side of the road.
Dude, that's literally the beginning of Prometheus.
And then literally just dipping out, and that formed an entire life form.
A literal ecosystem that gives birth to a bacteria that becomes a fucking organism.
And we do that stuff all the time. I mean, if you really think about like even simple things, we do it at its base form, with basic little terrariums and things like that, where you can,
for sure,
you can build a terrarium and completely cover it, and that will take care of itself until the glass breaks or whatever it is that's holding it essentially breaks. That will last lifetimes, outlive everybody.
Play God.
It really is. The idea of God itself and playing God is immensely easy. It's just, who created it? Like, that's when we're starting to get into theological stuff. But
the theological stuff it does often go hand in hand with higher power.
Sure it does.
What is the idea of higher power? Why do we perceive it that way? Even the statement "in God's image" is just fucky.
Sure.
Well, yeah, we're bipedal. Like, that's where the conversation ends.
I like.
Look at all of the other bipedal things in existence.
Like, well, in God's image, but what is God's image? Where does that come from? Like, what is the image that you are projecting?
Yeah. When everything else that we have in existence looks the way it does, why do we look and act in one specific way?
Yeah.
It's fun. I'm glad you had fun talking aliens, because it's not everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone wants to, actually have an intelligent conversation, semi-intelligent conversation based on facts or truth or theory, or, some people just want to sit down and read some stories. So sometimes we gotta change things up sometimes. I can't just always sit down and make you read stories about how your kids are going to murder you one day.
Sure. We'll do that next time.
We'll do that next time. But there are already several other episodes of us having done that multiple times.
Yep. I mean, we literally had an entire 2-hour conversation episode of Game of Thrones.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did.
It was good. And then we did another half hour of it today.
Yeah, we did.
It was good.
You can't get it out of us.
You can't get it out. No, we're broken.
Yeah.
We're broken. And that's okay. Yeah. Because
show's been off the air now for 6-7 years, and we still talk about it all the time.
If aliens exist, they'd be just as upset about what happened in Game of Thrones.
That's literally why they stopped coming to our planet.
Yeah,
because they were like, this guy
they said the documents could leak because they weren't getting their same fix anymore. They said it's fine. They can know about us now. Game of Thrones is done. Trash the planet. Trash the planet.
So
just
the
dump
best
it.
thing you guys got going on
just
here.
Dump it. Dump the planet. Trash the planet.
Fucked it up. Fucked it up. Melt your ice caps. Just flood yourselves. Fucking get out of here.
Winter is coming.